My name is Guillermo Rojas, and this tutorial is called Attempts to Perceive, Know, and Represent the Atmosphere of a Place. When we talk about architecture, the term atmosphere initially seems to be familiar and understandable, but it's far from that. We say that every place has its own atmosphere, a feeling that somehow is poured into space and that affects us, but it's really hard to define what it actually is. Atmospheres are something ambiguous, diffuse, and vague. So the idea of representing them in architecture is provocative, yet at the same time troublesome and full of paradoxes. Because representations are in essence analytical acts, yet atmospheres, they act as totality, so they can't be decomposed into parts. And representations are rational acts, yet the access to atmospheres anticipates any rational recognition of their properties and qualities. And representations are determinative acts, yet the nature of atmospheres is that they exist indeterminately. And it's precisely because of these paradoxes that the idea of representing atmospheres in architecture is interesting, and possibly the reason why there aren't many discussions about this. And it's intriguing because for several authors, atmospheres are the central objective of the architects. Yet they don't really exist, at least not as entities that remain stable over time. So how could architectural representation communicate the atmosphere of a place? Conventional architectural representations aims to clarify the reality and to determine it as something directly accessible and object-like. So they are useful to recognize with exactitude the number of windows of a place or its precise dimensions, but they offer little means to convey its more ambiguous atmospheric qualities. And this condition is relevant as most of the knowledge we acquire from the study of other architecture works comes from these kinds of representations. So whether through drawings, models, or even photographs, these interpretations condition the way an architecture work is understood. And if through these representations, only the dimensional and formal properties of a place are communicated, then those accounts are being read as the most dominant, if not the unique, drivers of architecture. On the other hand, the scale of a place, its lights, its soundscapes, or even the changing presence of people there, these are some elements or phenomena that can't be directly represented by this means, and yet they constitute the very essence of any particular space. This pictorial is focused on these more vague, diffuse, and ambiguous qualities of architecture, and it presents a range of experiments to explore the nature of atmospheres and to approach to a method for their better study, understanding, and representation in architecture. The images we're seeing now are part of more than 300 experimental exercises produced in the city of Melbourne between 2020 and 2021. We focused on identifying the most significant atmospheric qualities of a path or arcades and lanes as a case study. And we transcribed these discrete qualities into diverse notations and diagrams. By performing the same exercise under different circumstances for a year, we did not seek to produce a set of idiosyncratic interpretations of the case study, but rather use those interpretations as a body of information to discover and comprehend its more persistent atmospheric qualities. This under the assumption that knowing the properties of the object of inquiry, the atmospheric qualities, is the first step to approach to more appropriate means to represent them. Atmospheres imbue everything and tinge whole spaces with emotions. Yet the spaces colored with an atmospheric tone are also objective spaces, so they should be transmissible to someone who doesn't necessarily know them. As an early attempt to test this assumption, a series of paintings were produced after the analysis of these rotations. With its flaws and limitations, the series serves as an opposition to the conventional modes of representation of built architectures. The series do not seek for precision, clarity, and boundaries, as a typical architecture drawing would do. On the contrary, these representations extolled the value of the indeterminate, as through it, more ambiguous, diffuse, and unstable conditions can be suggested. As with the experience of atmospheres, the all-encompassing characters of these representations is meant to be perceived before understood. They aim to strike us in the same way that an atmosphere does.